Hi, and welcome to the first of some explanation videos as to some spiritual terminology and getting to grips with our experience here in these terms, starting off with the twin soul, or some people have called it twin flame, twin soul. Mostly it's twin flame, twin soul. I kind of prefer currently to call it one soul or a split soul. I actually prefer the term split soul, but it's not one that is often used. So to start off with, I want to talk about the soul. Let's just talk about the word soul. What is a soul? So everything is one thing in actuality. So to use the theory of the Big Bang Theory, everything that has ever existed was once one ball of stuff. And then at some point, that ball of stuff explodes and that matter spreads and starts spreading. A soul essentially is an individuation of oneness. So that one thing has a desire to. Desire arises within the creator and the created, which is all one thing, to experience itself. And in order to experience itself, it must create another. It must create something else within which it can experience itself. And so oneness becomes many. But it is also one thing. So it's a bit like a jigsaw. A jigsaw is one thing, but it is also many pieces. And so basically, that is what a soul is. So it's as though oneness explodes and then goes on a journey. So it's always expanding, it's always exploring. It's essentially exploring itself. So a soul is a stream of consciousness, a stream of awareness, which exists throughout that whole kind of jigsaw. And then it kind of visits different pieces. Okay? Earth, and this earthly experience, is actually a very limited perspective in terms of the soul. It's where we are, really, our perspective is the most limited. But it's also brilliant because of that. So it's almost as though we have amnesia, because it is completely possible from our earthly perspective to experience all different levels of conscious awareness going all the way back to source. It is 100% possible because it's part of our journey. It's part of our evolution. And so on the one hand, it's kind of like we have amnesia, but on the other hand, it's also extremely beautiful because it's the process of remembering that feels so good. There is the capacity to experience so much more because we can experience it from this perspective. It's almost like we can expand our perspective. So really we're here to experience. Our earthly experience is of our consciousness, which is, to be honest, across all time and space, which doesn't really exist. So it's kind of like there is a chronology to it. So there's something that's kind of expanding, but it's also just one thing. It's almost as like, it can be experienced as a big bang, as like an expansion, but it can also be experienced as though we've become small. So it's almost like one thing, we can see like a ball, a golf ball as one thing, but then if we zoom in, then it becomes large. Then the experience of the golf ball becomes longer. It's kind of like how time exists, if that makes sense. So it doesn't really matter whether we expand it out or we go smaller, you know, we go into the macro, go into the micro. It's the same thing. It's just slowing things down vibrationally so that we can experience it piece by piece, so that we can understand it more fully. And really what we're trying to understand is what we already are, is God, is Source. So that is what, to explain the terminology, that's what the soul is of this phrase or understanding. So that is that soul. The soul, or I would also like to call it an individuation. It's an individuation of the one. Is here to experience. It's on a journey back to itself. So essentially, it's a bit of a pointless journey, if that makes sense. If the journey is trying to get somewhere, trying to achieve something, because it's only ever going to go back home. The point of the journey is to return home. Which is why presence is extremely important, or conscious awareness. Because the point of the journey is the journey, not home. The start and the end of the journey is the same, exactly the same place. So if we miss that the whole point is that we are present in our experience of the journey, we kind of miss out on the experience of the soul. That's the first mistake that some people make within what one may call spirituality, which I don't necessarily believe in, because when we look at it in this context, all experience is spiritual or of life itself. I actually call it realism. For me, spirituality is realism. Presence is realism. It's being with what is. It's being with what is happening. It's being present in our experience. So there is the soul. And that is part 1. Part 2 is available in a separate video in just a second. Please join my community over on Patreon if you are interested in more videos like this and like this. And also a live monthly Q&A session with me over there on Patreon. The link is below.